My name is Dustin Kelly, but everybody calls me DJ. I'm prior Army, serving as both a Ford observer and a military police officer. I spent the last 14 and a half years as a police officer and detective in a large metropolitan police department. Two things that I've learned throughout my career. One, everybody has a story to tell. And two, the best stories are true. This is the DTD Podcast. In 3, 2, 1, and we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the DTD Podcast. This week in the studio, a man who was born in Germany during the Cold War to a father who was a Green Beret assigned to the Berlin Detachment. This guest grew up learning early that if you wanted to be the best, you had to beat the best. This guest is a second-generation Texas A&M Corps Cadets graduate and is also a second-generation Green Beret. He started his career as a chemical officer assigned to 2nd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group. This guest has seen deployments to the Philippines, Iraq, Afghanistan. He's conducted special operations all across the Indo-Pacific theater, and he's been an observer, coach, and trainer for Special Forces at the Joint Readiness Training Center. Today, he's the director for the Army Special Operations Language, Regional Education, and Cultural Directorate, and is the co-host for the Pineland Underground podcast. He's an officer, and he's a gentleman. Please welcome Major Bobby Tuttle. What's going on, my friend?
DJ, what's going on, man? Happy to be on the show. Thanks for hosting me.
I'm so happy that you're here. As we both know, you and I have a mutual friend in Chuck Ritter. And he helped kind of put this together. And I'm so happy that you're here to talk to you, because I think that you can bring a lot to the table to talk about that. I think we're going to see a different side of Special Forces with you. Most of my guys that come on that are Green Berets are usually enlisted, and I think you can bring a different kind of approach to it. So let's start out being a second generation Green Beret. Let's talk about your dad being born in Berlin, Germany. And let's hear some stories about that, because that had to be wild growing up in that era.
Yes, absolutely. So I am a second generation Green Beret, which is pretty cool because at a young age, I definitely had big shoes to fill. And some of my earliest childhood memories are driving around in a Humvee, going to watch Chinooks, land in water and launch Zodiacs. And really just seeing my dad, jump out of airplanes, being on the drop zone for huge, jumps out in Europe. And for me, it was one of those things like, hey, my dad's a real life Green Beret. My dad's a real life G.I. Joe. And we got to live the life overseas, which was really cool at an early age. So, my parents collectively, they spent, I think, 12 years in Germany. My dad's a longtime member of 10th Special Forces Group, but the only place he was ever signed was literally over in Germany. They did tours in Berlin, Bad Tolz, and then Stuttgart. And I happened to be born in Berlin during their second tour over there. And got involved at an early age. Our parents, so my sister and I, lived over there for about 7, 8, 9 years as kids. And our parents were really cool about sending us off post to the German-speaking schools, where we're the only American or English speakers there. And so, really exposed at an early age. And I absolutely loved kind of getting to see my dad kitted up, camoed up, coming back from long trips over in Europe. And, being born during the Cold War, the big scary thing was the Russians coming over, the Soviets coming over back into Germany. And so it wasn't until a little bit later in life that I started to realize how unique and special that was when my dad, in all my baby photos and little kid photos, looked like early James Bond, rocking long hair and turtlenecks and, nice suits and stuff. He's like, oh, he's not in uniform. That's kind of odd. He's got great hair. Okay. But no, it was really neat for me personally. And, I think kind of a series of fortunate events and some great mentors in my life continued to steer me in a great direction towards a life of service and joining the Army myself. So I'm a proud second generation Green Beret. And again, my mom and sister were also exposed to that. And so what's really cool is my wife, Lee, really kind of takes that in and emulates the amazing military spouse and, military wife, and does a great job, carrying that torch for our family.
Well, I think it's interesting when you bring that up about, being on drop zones, doing all these kind of things where you get to see your dad in action. I would think that a lot of that is gone these days where you can't really see what's going on just because of operational security and stuff like that. Looking back on it and looking back on your dad, sometimes they say that the commando gene jumps a generation, that all those kind of things where if they had a commando as a dad, maybe they wouldn't be one, or there was a bad experience and they don't want to be one. But everything that you talk about seems like it was absolutely fantastic having that as a dad. So I wonder then, what was it that he instilled upon you at such an early age that made you want to do this, that made you love it?
Yeah, so I, I've always really looked up to my parents. My parents have been married, for over 30 years, and having a fantastic marriage, and really set a good set of values on my sister and I at an early age. And I remember my dad, kind of talking to me when I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old. And, the most important things of life were God, family, and country. And those were all things that really kind of hit home as I would see the dads, collectively when we were in Germany, would pick up and go out for a large training exercise or get activated. And then I also saw that the moms and the kids really had this really close knit relationship when the dads were gone. And so for that, it was kind of like, oh, this is unique. Does everybody share this, one sense of patriotism, but also the adventure, the travel, and living overseas. And seeing my dad personally in uniform was one of those, like, he's fit, good looking, could speak German, could get along with anybody, but was also looked at, as an officer in the military, as somebody who was extremely competent and confident, and people looked up to. And I was like, dang, that's kind of neat. I think I'd like to do something like that. And then to be also, late '80s, early '90s, like GI Joes were the thing. Like, literally, I loved the GI Joe movie, and then I'd come back home and I'd play GI Joes with my friends in the creek, and we would literally play army at Patch Barracks in Stuttgart. We were running all over, playing army, eating an MRE, and you camoed up. And God, I remember one time in my dad's BMW, we like found his rubber ducks from an exercise. And we're like, oh, cool, like, fake guns we can play with across the neighborhood. So we were like playing war in the neighborhood in Germany until one of the MPs came over and was like, hey, that kind of looks like a real weapon. We actually have to take that away from you guys. And I was grounded for like a week and a half because here we are running around like, doing, raids and assault missions over in, on base as like, 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of something we probably shouldn't be doing with rubber ducks that belong to our dads right now. So
I just want to point out something real quick. You can still watch GI Joe both on YouTube and on an app of streaming service. So I just want to put that out to you. Not saying that I watch it all the time, but I'm saying I watch it all the time.
There's something cool about it. I'm not going to lie. There's something really cool about that show from the 80s and 90s.
As you do this and as you kind of grow up, now you said your dad was only stationed in Germany as Special Forces. Now, did you come back to the United States at all? Were you stationed here, or what did you kind of do after all that was said and done in Europe? Because you were only at that time, 9 years old when it ends?
Yeah, so for us, it was like 3 years in Germany and like 2 or 3 years back stateside, and then it was kind of bouncing back and forth. I think we went from a slew of places, but we also lived at Fort Smith, Arkansas. So my dad was stationed at Fort Chaffee. And in fact, he was actually standing up the first iteration of what's called Special Operations Plans, or SOF plans, which is the same organization that now oversees and integrates into the Joint Readiness Training Center. So I know we'll probably maybe get into this a little bit later, but like I had the opportunity as an observer, coach, trainer years later, when I'm now a Special Forces soldier myself, to work with my dad at the same training venue where we would be in the same meetings, briefing one another, and then helping to teach, coach, and mentor special forces teams as they're coming through training scenarios. So like it was really cool to kind of see the parallels of what special operations or Green Berets were actually doing in Berlin during the Cold War to deter, but also in the event the Soviets came over and it really moved into Germany, started occupying. It was how do they resist and slow down the maneuver so large conventional forces could actually come meet them head to head. And so it's really focused on resistance operations. And as a kid, I didn't know those things. I just thought it was really cool with kind of a flashy, the uniforms, the parachutes, being around large military things like Humvees and boats, and then aircraft. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of neat. Like not every kid has this opportunity, so it really did instill a good sense of patriotism, but also a sense of adventure for my family and I.
When you look back on it now, is there anything that you wish you could change about your childhood, or is there anything you wish you would have maybe focused on a little more?
That's a good question. I don't know. I had such a cool childhood growing up overseas. Like I was into sports, into scouting, which was big into my family. My dad is a second generation Eagle Scout, so I became one years later. That was something we shared because that was something unique to his dad, my grandfather, who passed away at an early age from my dad. So I never met him. But really, it's I grew up outside, learning to kind of like live off the land, play in the woods, unique opportunities, and then being competitive. And then living in Germany, it's one of those like I was a German speaker in the school, so my friends were native Germans, or Greek kids who were in the German school themselves. And so like I was the American kid. It's kind of weird. And I got to invite kids over on base for things like Halloween and go trick or treating and go look at the Christmas lights on base, which was kind of unique. So if you ask us something I would have changed, maybe spend a little bit more time overseas, because we came back when I was in about middle school, went to the DC area, and then I kind of stayed through. We stayed stateside from there as my dad retired from the Pentagon.
So, was there ever an enlisted idea in your head, or was it always you wanted to go down the officer route?
In fact, I talked to many of his mentors and sergeants majors, and really got a good understanding of what the non-commissioned officer brought to the table. I got to see kind of that growth from a soldier kind of initial phase into a special forces non-commissioned officer. I mean, these were the other dads I hung out with, when I was a kid. Other dads were Green Berets, and the occasional Navy SEAL that we had over there as well in Germany. And so I really got exposed to that at an early age. For me, though, it was whole family is multiple generations of Texas Aggies, and so I wanted to get the opportunity to one, pursue a degree in college. I wasn't completely sure the military was going to be a good fit for me. I was a little rebellious as a kid, and needed some good structure. But really, I think the officer route was the way to kind of help me better understand how to emulate that leadership, but then also kind of bring that level of responsibility to the table once I'd adapted and matured a little bit.
So, let's talk about that childhood of being however you were, rambunctious, whatever you want to call it. Like I said before, we both know Chuck. And if you hear Chuck's story of when he was a kid, it's crazy. It's crazy to see how he ended up. What I love about his story, though, is he's big on second chances, talking to someone, learning why they did something or maybe why they acted the way they did. When you look back on yours, what was it that you were really rowdy about or kind of unconventional then? And I kind of want to compare the stories to each other.
Yeah, sure. So DJ, having a dad who was in the military, obviously he brought that level of discipline and structure to the household.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say I had a little bit of a strict dad as a child growing up, and for me that was probably healthy. That was probably the best way for me to kind of learn was a little, all right, kind of snap into it. Um, so really, when I got into high school, you're exploring things, you're trying to figure out where you fit in, and how to be, I guess, a version of cool, and like what kind of your identity is, whether that's sports, whether that was for me that was scouts, and just kind of trying to figure out what it is you like and what you kind of gravitate towards. Um, so I had several disciplinary times when I didn't make the best decisions. I maybe wasn't the most truthful kid to my parents. I was trying to probably just see what I could get away with. And it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything, illegal or immoral, but just had a hard time listening and, making sure that I adhered to the advice of my parents. I remember one time actually, I had fibbed to my parents about where I was going out one night. This is in high school. And my mom is actually a math teacher at my high school. So she kind of figures out things before, she hears things through the rumor mill from other kids and other teachers. And it's like, oh man, you can't even keep secrets anymore. But I got in trouble one time, and I remember my dad, made a really good point to me. I had posters on in my room, and and all those were kind of removed for me after I got in trouble. And my dad printed off a piece of computer paper, and on that piece of computer paper was a photo or kind of a picture of John Wayne. And at the very bottom, there was a quote that says, "Life is tough. It's tougher when you're stupid." And that was tacked above my bed for probably about 75 days. And this was wintertime. I think I was a sophomore in high school. And I went like 16-2 in wrestling that season right there because I had nothing else to focus on but eating, sleeping, going to school in my academics, and then just competing on the mat for wrestling. And so for me, it was all the distractions were taken away. And as a rambunctious kid who was distracted by probably lots of things, that was good for me to kind of, get a little, kick there of like, oh, okay, focus on something, work hard, eliminate distractions, and then you can overcome and do very well. And at the end of the day, that's what's important. So that's just a little example of something right there.
So do you think you fell back on that in college, in the qualifications course, in everything that you've done? Do you think you fell back on that at all?
I think I did actually. That's for me. That was kind of like custom tailored discipline, which was a wake up call for me. That's something that I think it really hit home with me. Of if I eliminate distractions and I focus on that goal and work hard for it. You dedicate time. You get up early. You eliminate everything else that's not important to it. Eat, sleep, breathe, and drive. And that's kind of what I think can really push you through that goal setting and then accomplishing those goals. And I would say I took that mentality in stride. Going into college, it's a good thing I joined the Corps Cadets at Texas A&M because I probably would have had distractions, and the structure, the forced study time, the forced, hey, you need to take account and put grades first. That's what kind of kept me in line. And then really that physical competition, workouts twice a day, kind of smoke sessions when the group of cadets would get in trouble. You compete with everybody around you to make you better. And that's what really drives me personally. And so it's one of those, I think that at an early age, I learned that those were the things that really made me want to be a member of a team, but also try to see if I could excel to the point and be respected as the captain of the team, and then help build it and kind of push it along.
Now, A&M, you're kind of on your own for the first. Now, of course, you have the Corps Cadets with you. You have something kind of keeping you aligned, but this is the first time that you're kind of on your own out in the world. Are you still thinking while you're going through the Corps Cadets, are you still thinking about doing that special operations, that military lifestyle? Because I know you said in the beginning you didn't know if it would be quite the fit, but as you start to see and look around you, is it becoming more and more a part of your identity?
So just to step back real quick, When I was in high school, so we're in the Northern Virginia area. My dad's retired out of the Pentagon, and I have an older sister. She's 2 years older, and her name's Kelly. And we're kind of looking at colleges. And the very first thing, so we come back from Germany. My sister's going into high school, and I'm going. We're both going into high school. She's 2 years older. The very first time we were at Texas A&M was when the bonfire stack fell in 1999. And the very first time I ever stepped foot on campus was about 2 days after the bonfire stack fell. And the Aggie bonfire is a massive tradition dating back, I think, for almost 100 years. And the bonfire symbolizes the burning desire to beat the hell out of the University of Texas, or TU. And regrettably, in '99, it actually fell late night, and we lost 12 Aggies who were killed during the incident. And my first time on campus was this sombering, really, really unique, but heartwarming time on campus that the stack had just fallen, 12 members of the university had passed. And you go to the game, and it's this lingering thing in the back, but it was this incredibly memorable time that everybody came together across University of Texas, across Texas A&M, all around the Thanksgiving rivalry football game. And it was just almost this heartwarming time to be there and really see how the university pulled together. So fast forward, that really kind of was like, hey, this whole Aggie thing, I know my dad went there. I know my mom went there. I know my uncle went there. But this is kind of unique. I think I want to be part of something a little bit bigger than me and something that's special. And so fast forward, my sister wound up going there. And again, we're in the DC area, and I've been offered an ROTC scholarship to go to A&M. And originally I was like, you know what? I just don't know if it's for me, the haircuts, the uniforms. Um, I, I just didn't think it was something that I was really cut out for. And I was trying too much to be cool instead of realizing what an opportunity it was. And actually, I initially turned down a scholarship opportunity. And then I talked to my dad, talked to my mom, and they said, hey, just listen, not everybody gets an opportunity like this. Consider it. Think of what you could do. Think of some of the leaders that you've met in your lifetime, and some of the mentors, and just think of the traits that they have. And if that's something that you think the Corps cadets can help you grow internally, then let's go. Let's try it. If not, no hard feelings. It's okay. We'd still love you to go to A&M if possible, but you don't have to be a member of the Corps. And I slept on it. I reflected on it. And I said, you know what? I think things happen for a reason. I was offered this ROTC scholarship. Let's give it a shot. And so I changed my acceptance, and I did accept it. And so I wound up going there. And going from the Northern Virginia area, you're like the only kid outside of the state of Texas to go at A&M. And people are like, "You're from where? Where's Virginia? What's Washington D.C.? Where is that at?" Um, but what's really neat is my sister was there 2 years ahead of me, which she kind of helped me adjust to the culture. And then joining the Corps, it was instantly like, hey, this is something you can compete in. You're automatically given like a group of friends that they're different. Everyone's coming from a small town or rural area or big city and within Texas, but they're all Texans, and you're kind of this anomaly coming from Virginia. So it's unique for me. I got a lot of, I would say, kind of cool attention in the sense that people were interested on, what's the East Coast is like and what's Northern Virginia like, and what's it like being a military brat. And I really liked it. I liked the camaraderie, I liked the fellowship, and I liked the challenge. And I think that's kind of the theme there is I saw an opportunity to try out for something. The Corps Cadets is a smaller club within the greater A&M student body. And I was like, you know what? Let's be part of something unique. And I think I'd like to try that. And again, that's one of those where I was like, if I try it and don't like it, I could probably quit, but I don't know how to quit. And that's not really in my vocabulary because my parents instilled that at an early age. So we're going to try it, and we're just going to rock it, and we're going to make it unique in our own, and it'll be cool in its own way. And I loved it. I had a blast. And some of my closest friends now are, my roommates from Texas A&M and the Corps. I go back regularly for football games. I go back to see friends. I'm on campus, and I'm excited to expose my kids to it because it's such a unique place that it really runs in our family, and I like that.
With this ROTC program, I'm not sure really how it works at the end, how you get your branch or anything like that. So can we walk through that? And then I want to walk through the heartbreak that was what you received at the end of it. But it ended up with everything, like I say about you, it ended up working out for you in the end. So let's talk about how they branch, what happened to you, and then what you kind of did to correct the problem.
Yeah, DJ, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and luck favors the prepared, right? Um, so the branch assessment is, across for all the ROTC cadets across the nation, of which Texas A&M is a senior military college, like Texas, like Virginia Tech, like the Citadel, like VMI. It just happens to be the largest, and then I would argue it's the most prestigious, but that's my biased opinion. But yeah, so you go. Your grades obviously are inclusive in how you're assessed by the Army for your branch, and you go perform at what's called the Leadership Development Assessment Camp, or LDAC, or Warrior Forge as we knew it back then. And it's really your summer camp where you go show off the skills that you've learned from being a freshman, sophomore, and junior, and then you're evaluated on your ability to do those things: leadership, land navigation, team building, physical training tests, all the things that you've really built up for the past few years. So long story is all those things come together, and during a sessions day, you really fill out kind of your one to end the preferences of the Army branch you want to go. And obviously, so I graduated in 2007. So this is like around 2006. You're filling out, infantry and maneuver, armor and field artillery, the combat arms. Kind of during the height of Iraq and Afghanistan are a lot of the branches that guys are most excited about, because that's very September 11th. People are excited to have the opportunity to go overseas. So for me, I think it was spring of 2007, or early 2007. What they do is they brought everybody into, all the seniors who are assessing their branch, or finding out their branch. They brought them into a room. And we had a few West Point cadre members who I think kind of brought a tradition from the academy. But what they did is, I think there was probably about 80 of us who were going to graduate and commission at that time. So they handed us an envelope, and everybody's envelope had their name on it. So mine was, about to be Second Lieutenant Bobby Tuttle. And inside the envelope is a, 3x5 note card. And punched through the 3x5 note card is your branch insignia, the pins you wear on your uniform, your formal uniform. And so they hand them out to everybody, kind of sit in the middle of a sea of 80 people who are going to commission later on this year. And, people are looking up, holding the envelopes up to the light, trying to see what's through it, trying to see those crossed rifles and stuff. And, so our professor of military science, a great mentor of mine, Colonel Sam Hawes, he makes some kind of comments in the sense that, hey guys, we're really proud of all you guys have accomplished. The Army has some great things ready for you, and whatever you get, you're going to do phenomenally at it. You're well prepared, and you guys are going to be great leaders of character for our Army. So on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, open your envelopes. And so the guy, to my left, opens his envelope, and he's like, "Yeah, aviation." And the guy to my right, he rips his open, and he's like, "Infantry." And the next guy, my other buddy, is just like, "All right, medical service corps." And I open mine, and I look at it, and I'm dumbfounded. And I elbow the guy next to me. I goes, "Dude, what is this?" And he goes, "Bobby, that's the chemical corps." And I literally stood up, and I started to walk out. Tears are swelling in my eyes. And Colonel Sam Hawes, he grabs me on the shoulder, and he goes, "Hey, Bobby, are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I wasn't expecting this." He goes, "Don't worry. Everything happens for a reason. You're going to do great things, and I will connect you with some phenomenal chemical officers to talk to you about what this branch is about." I said, "Yes, sir." And then the rest of the group who got what they wanted all went out to Northgate, which is kind of our bar area at College Station, Texas, on the north side of campus. And I went back to my room and I kind of boohooed a bit because I was not sure what the Chemical Corps had in store for me. So I was heartbroken, to say the least. I wanted to be an infantryman, or really kind of a maneuver guy, something combat arms related, because that was cool, that was sexy, ruck marches and camo and airborne stuff. And I just had no idea what the Chemical Corps was. And so initially I was like, holy smokes, my Army career is going to be terrible. And I was really hurt about it. So that's how I found out. But I would say through a series of fortunate events, I found a great path, and things worked out really, really well.
So I want you to say it, and I want you to be honest. Did you ever shed a tear after you saw it?
Oh yeah, wholeheartedly. Yeah,
Really?
Big alligator tears.
Did
Oh yeah.
did any of your buddies say anything? Did you catch shit for it? Did anything happen?
It was one of those where, I thought I had done really well at the advanced camp. I think I was ranked extremely highly. I was like number 2 in our entire regiment. I was very involved on campus in ROTC stuff. In all of my ROTC military science classes, I was like the A student. But I was a business major at Texas A&M, and I had not performed well in accounting or finance classes. I wound up being a marketing major, which was pretty cool. But I would say my grades were not as high as I had hoped, and that's probably the number one thing that hurt me. Was that, yeah, hey, you rocked all the other things, the Army things, but 45 or 50% of what weighs into your sessions for the branch is your grades. And if you don't have high grades, you don't have good grades, and you're going to hurt for it, because that's what makes you competitive.
All right. So you get chemical, but by a strange, I want to go back real quick though. And I was thinking about it as you were talking. So you graduate 2007. So you start college 2002, 2003?
Yeah. Fall 2003. Yeah.
Okay. So you're a junior when 9/11 happens? Junior in high school?
I was a junior in high school, and right outside Washington, D.C. And of which, so when the Pentagon got hit, my dad, who I told you had retired out of the Pentagon, he was actually in Crystal City. So we're 20 minutes outside the city. My dad's office actually got hit. They were supposed to be there, but because of the towers getting hit, I think about 45 minutes earlier before the Pentagon did, everything had got shut down, and the meetings they were supposed to head to were canceled. So very much, September 11th truly hit home for me. I remember coming home from high school, and my mom was a math teacher at my high school, so everybody kind of found out at the exact same time. I came home, there was no cell service, couldn't get a hold of my dad. He wound up, basically going with his team from Crystal City over the other side of the highway to the Pentagon, and just helping being first responders. They were finding people to help give blood and just fitting in wherever they could, knowing that there was pretty catastrophic on the scene, but also, trying to make sure they stayed out of the way of the true first responders who were activated. So that was one of those where it was like, holy shit, this hit really close to home. And, there was a lot of mixed emotions, frustration, anger, sadness, inspiration to do something and be part of something. And that's probably one of the continued sparks that helped set me on the path for the Army itself.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because that seems to be where your story kind of splits for me. You say that you had anger, sadness, all these things. Your dad was across the highway. He took part at the Pentagon. Your senior year, you're thinking, I'm not going to take that ROTC scholarship. I don't know if that's the life for me. Then you take it. You want to go infantry. That doesn't quite work out for you. but it seems like it flows back and forth with you. Is it hard to keep your mind in the game and keep going for that end goal when things like that happen? Because it seems to me, and I think you would agree, that it switched back and forth with you a lot before you ended up where you're at now.
Yeah, it totally did. And for me, I think one of the big things was, I had a dad who was a career service member, and so for me, it was like, wow, that's 20 plus years. Like I'm 18 years old. I think the bigger question was, did I want to make a career out of it at the time, or just um, be a member who served for a few years
Okay.
and then maybe figure something else out. And so for me, it was I couldn't even fathom only joining the military for for I guess initial service obligation. It to me it was like, oh, that's actually a whole career. And when I realized that if you took the ROTC scholarship, and again, could be part of something bigger, and you'd found your niche within the Army, if it wasn't quite what you wanted, or you felt like you had accomplished what you wanted to, you didn't have to stay in for the entirety of a 20-year career. You could do your obligation or what you had signed up and volunteered for, and then you could gracefully find something else to do as another career progression as well. And so I think that was my thing, is I was fixated and I was like, yeah, it's kind of like a 20-year plan. I'm only 18 years old. Like I don't even know like what I want to eat for dinner tomorrow night, let alone decide what if I want to be a uniformed service member for the next 20 something years and get a haircut. I really wasn't big in the whole haircut and shaving thing. I
Well,
think
I can tell. But if you think about it now, like you look at it now as I'm older, I'm approaching 50, and I think 20 years, you'd be 38 years old and you're done. Like, or 42, however you want to do it when you graduate from college, 18 if you join, 22 when you're out of college. Let's go into your career a little, though, because this is where it gets interesting. You're a chemo. You're assigned to 2nd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group. So you're a support element. You're an enabler. You go there, and you get to see all this stuff around you. Are you happy that you're there and on the ground and learning what you're learning? Because I know at some point you were saying that they'd take you to the range and teach you. You'd get them a case of beer and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about you getting assigned there and really kind of catching a great break in your career by being assigned there.
so. That kind of goes back to the hey, luck favors the prepared, right? I was a chemo, and the chemical officer basic course, which was a blast. I had so much fun. Bugs and gas, like that was actually really cool course, like absolutely dope. I thought I was going to be Stanley Goodspeed from The Rock. That's what I told people. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty much like a chemical biologist, and like I work with like all sorts of nerve agents. But I got the opportunity to try out for Ranger School. I was fortunate enough to get to earn a Ranger School slot out of the Officer Basic course when I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And essentially, the chemical corps itself had not had a guy go through Ranger School and pass in a couple of years. So I go to Ranger School, which is cool. I go down, I do well, I pass Ranger School, but I'm slated to go to Germany as my first assignment to First Armor Division over in Baumholder, Germany. But during my time in Ranger School, I get held up and I get recycled in Florida. I take a 10-day recycle, not long at all, but I missed my report date to get to my first duty assignment. And my household goods have already been picked up, but they haven't been shipped yet. And then I graduate from Ranger School. My dad comes down, pins my tab on me, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, I have no idea what to do because I've missed my report date. I don't have a flight. I don't know how to show up. Like, what do I do? And so I go back to my parents' house in DC, and I graduate on a Friday, and I call up Human Resources Command and the Chemical Corps branch, and they're like, "Hey, check it out! Like you're in DC, coming home on leave. Come visit us in DC. Come to the branch headquarters, and we'll see you on Monday." So I show up Monday. I've got like chubby cheeks, a bald head because I just finished up Florida phase of Ranger School, and I'm stuffing my face. And I show up, and the colonel there is like, "Wow, like, all right, we've got a chemical corps graduated Ranger School stud, and who you don't have a unit to go to." Well, your unit in Germany has actually been deflagged and completely deactivated. So you can either go to Germany if you'd like, or you can tell me right now where else you would like to go. He says, Lieutenant Tuttle, what would you like to do? And I swear that those words have probably never been said more than a few times in anyone's Army career. So I was like, all right, I'd love to go to a special operations assignment. That'd be cool, right? Because I know that every SOF unit or SF unit has a battalion chemical officer. And the lieutenant colonel or the colonel looks at the roster and goes, all right, cool. We have an opening coming up at 2nd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group. Would you like to go to Fort Lewis, Washington? I say, yes, sir. He goes, would you like to take 30 days of leave en route? I say, absolutely, sir. He's like, all right, cool. You're going to 1st Special Forces Group, pack your bags, and you show up in 30 days. So I kind of like refit. So I had the opportunity, which was completely unique, to say where I wanted to go because I had earned a Ranger tab as a chemo. And for me, that was kind of neat because somebody had asked me, what would you like to do? And so I got the opportunity to show up to 2nd Battalion. And I get up there, and what's neat is they have Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Southern Philippines, which is Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines. And so I show up, and the Battalion XO, who's a good friend of mine now and a mentor of mine, him and his wife, but it's Major Josh Walker, and he's like, Bobby, all right, we're going to put you to good work. And he gives me all these additional tasks. I'm the bushy-tailed chemo, and I'm figuring them out. I'm knocking down targets. And about 30 days later, the battalion executive officer, so Major Walker, and like one of the company commanders, Jeremiah and Labaka, come back, and they go, hey, I hear there's a SEER school slot down at Fort Rucker. Let's send the new chemo. So they send me to the Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape School. Again, another opportunity where I'm like, yep, let's do it. I'd love to. Sounds like a challenge. I'm excited. And long story is having gone through a few things, cutting my teeth, and again, volunteering for things that were a little bit tough. But, keeping my head down, staying humble about it, and being surrounded by people who saw potential in me. The next thing they said, hey, you're going to deploy to the Southern Philippines and serve as a Special Forces Company executive officer. I said, sir, where the hell is the Philippines? I don't even know where that is at. Can you show it to me on a map? But had the opportunity to go deploy, which was probably the coolest thing for me. And from there, continued to kind of try to make my name for myself within the unit and just find out where I could fit in and be a contributor and really kind of work my butt off to see where I could help out the unit. So that's kind of how I found my way into initial times within 1st Special Forces Group.
Two things come up with that when you talk about that. One, you're not long tabbed when you go there, right? You got your Ranger tab, you've been to SEER school, all those kind of things, but you're not long tabbed. Let's talk about how that is kind of being in command and not being a long tab, if there was any kind of kickback on that or anything like that. And then two, I want you to kind of talk about the Philippines, how much counterterrorism stuff was actually happening in the Philippines, because I don't think a lot of people know about that. They talk about it, but there was a lot of missions going on over there.
Yeah, tons of missions, and that was 2008, 2009. That was the height of Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines, which was unique to 1st Special Forces Group. So to kind of answer your first question, though, DJ, is I was a company executive officer in the sense that it's usually filled by a senior special forces officer, kind of a senior captain. And I couldn't even tell you like what the heck a battalion even looked like, let alone a special forces company. But I was surrounded by really, really good leaders who I think they saw maybe a little bit of me, them in me, from their kind of time as lieutenants. I volunteered for everything. I was hungry. I was humble about it, and I tried to be as smart as possible, or at least ask good questions and see where I could fit in, even though I didn't know mostly anything about a special operations unit. And so for me, it was really, hey, just be a contributor, and then always move to the sound of gunfire. Hey, if there's an opportunity, go prepare and then be value added to it. And I'm not a long tab guy. Our soft truth that focuses, hey, most special operations require special operations support. I was very much a support guy or an enabler, but I had guys who invested in me, let me come to the range, let me jump, let me tag along. And I asked questions, I observed, I saw what good special forces teams looked like, how they treated one another, but also I respected how they treated me as a, young, naive, support individual. And I tried to emulate that years later as a actual special forces soldier. There's so many good people out there that are part of the mission and part of the, really part of the task organization. They're part of the team, and they need to be treated like that. And so, guys treated me really well. Not everybody. I caught a lot of shit. I got harassed a little bit. I made a lot of mistakes. And that was cool. That was okay because it was all learning for me. But yeah, guys would be like, "Hey, Lieutenant Tuttle, come to the range with us." But also, when you don't say thanks and you forget to clean up brass at the end of it, we're going to tell you you're fucked up. We're going to tell you you're messed up. And so it was one of those like, oh yeah, just remember the senior non-commissioned officers, know what they're doing and they're a wealth of knowledge. Soak it up. And then kind of getting into the Philippines, I went over. I was there over the holidays in 2008. I was learning as many Tagalog phrases as I could. I had the opportunity to be down in the southern Philippines, so Mindanao, which is the highly contested area with trans regional terrorists. You have Islamic State organizations, and every single organization almost has like a branch off. You have one organization that would reach a peace agreement with the government, and then half the organization would be really upset with the peace agreement, so they would fraction and start their own umbrella organization. And that was quite common. And so for me, it was, wow, there are some really bad people down here who are kidnapping, killing, attacking, hunting, and then moving people, weapons, equipment, and drugs in and out to fund their operations. And so I really got a good understanding of how that was working transregionally. I saw how First Special Force Group was postured to counter that, and then used language and cultural abilities to establish rapport with the locals, to figure out where the bad guys were operating and who they were, and then really to help bring stability to like the region and help the people, with life support type entities like food, water, medical supplies that a special forces team can do in an austere environment. One real cool story is I happened to be there when Manny Pacquiao fought Oscar De La Hoya. And if you want to talk about a true national hero on the global stage, but it's a national hero of the Philippines, Oscar De La Hoya was like the one of the title fighters, and this no-name left-handed Filipino, kind of a scrapper who was rags to riches story, had the opportunity to fight him. And what was really neat is we're sitting in the operations center in the southern Philippines, triple canopy jungle everywhere. And the Abu Sayyaf group that we were there to counter, they had like a 24-hour ceasefire with the Filipino security forces and the Americans, and everybody just watched the fight. I mean, the fight was in Vegas, but everyone's huddled. We're in our operations center with every TV on, watching the fight, and I just picture, the Abu Sayyaf group and the terrorist organizations are like in triple canopy jungle under tarps, huddled under some TV with like a little antenna, trying to get the fight on HBO. And it was pretty cool to see how a national hero like that could literally stop the fighting for a day and bring kind of stability just for that period of time, so that the pride, really kind of filtered down through every person who was in that country.
When you see stuff like that as a special forces, still at this time, you're still not actually special forces, but you're assigned with them, but you see war, conflict, combat differently, you would agree, than big army would. And with a story like that you just told, you're seeing it on a different scale. You're there to counter a certain group. That group says, we're going to hold a moratorium. We're not going to fight. And it stops. Now, of course, that's happened in Big Army before. But do you agree during your whole career with special operations that you've seen a different kind of war than a lot of people have?
Yeah, I think the way that special operations sees it, it's you're working with the populace, you're working with the people, and then you're side by side with your partner force. For example, we had Filipinos on our base, so AFP, Armed Forces of the Philippines, um, Army, who are actually kind of our security force around us, and then our special operations elements that we're working with our special forces teams. So you have Filipino special forces and our American special forces working side by side. And you are seeing it firsthand. You go out to a village and you've seen where the terrorist organizations have come through, have either raided raided the village, have maybe kidnapped or done some pretty horrific things to people in the village, and then have stolen, looted just to fund their own operations. And you're seeing the aftermath of that and you're saying, "Holy smokes! Like this happens to these innocent people who are here, and it's happening to them because they have no way of protecting themselves. They have no way of fighting back, and any opportunity that they try to push back or fight back, they're probably going to get really bad things that are going to happen to them or their family members." And hearing some of the stories, seeing some of the faces, you got to think I'm like a 23-year-old, like very you know clean shaven, doesn't look like a kind of a battle hardened special forces soldier. So I look a little bit different, physically to some of the villagers, and it's one of those where I feel like I felt a lot of sympathy there. I felt like they opened up a little bit more to me, or at least I would get a lot of the looks of kind of the help, but we're also thankful that you're here. Thanks for being here and away from your home to help us out. And so, really kind of getting back to your question, DJ, is I think my first exposure to counterterrorism was it hit home in the sense that you saw it all around you, you saw it where you drove to. And yeah, bullets weren't flying at the time, massive IEDs weren't going off, and you could walk around and feel like you weren't going to get shot, but you knew that there was some bad things going on at the place you had just been, and you just wanted to help, and you wanted to do more than just build security for them. You wanted to help them eliminate the threats that were around them.
All right, so compare and contrast that to Iraq and Afghanistan because you're still part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. You still do Enduring Freedom for Afghanistan. So let's compare and contrast that to the Philippines because I think that's going to open your eyes even more to this world and how it's changed and the actual GWAT that's going on.
Yeah, what you're doing in the Philippines isn't completely kinetic, right? You are you're learning what life support you can bring to the area. You're helping provide better opportunities to the terrorist organizations who are trying to fund their operations through things like KFR, kidnaps for ransom. And so, really, you're getting at almost that diplomatic side of it and the economic side in these tiny little fishing villages in the southern Philippines, which again, they're like little spots on the map. But the tribes have lived there forever. The people have grown up there and they don't know any better. And this is their livelihood. And so for me, the face of war looked like, the oppressed villagers in the southern Philippines that you're just like, hey, whatever I can do to help you feel more comfortable, safe, secure, and not feel threatened, and just live out your daily life. That's what we were looking to try to do. And again, you're doing it by going out and providing medical support, helping people build fish farms so they can provide fish and food and sustainment for like the local village themselves, and do things other than going out and working terrorist type activities to fund their operations. And if you give somebody a better opportunity and a better life, and you give them a better life for their family, they're more willing to lay down their weapon because they want to live as well. people want to live, they want to have a livelihood and a family, and they want to, grow old and enjoy their way of life. And so if you can provide that a little bit more to them, then I think you've done a good job at the end of the day. And so that's one of those things when you kind of see the parallels to Iraq and Afghanistan is, a lot of that was just eliminating people off the battle space. And that still needs to happen too. There's some bad people out there that probably shouldn't be around. But if you give people a better livelihood, I think they're more willing to cooperate and continue to want to live a better life in support of their family and their neighbors and the people around them.
But would you say all three of those are different kinds of conflicts? Afghanistan compared to Iraq compared to the Philippines. Yes, you're taking chess pieces off the board, but you would agree there are three different kinds of combat, right?
They're completely different. Each one of them requires a deep sense of understanding. Each one of them requires its own, level of preparedness of who you're going to deal with, and the tribal aspects, the governmental aspects, and then really getting to know culturally the people and the historics of the region. Completely different ways to approach it. In the sense that, it's those are three completely separate conflicts. Again, Operation Enduring Freedom fell under the umbrella of, Philippines fell under the umbrella of OEF, Operation Enduring Freedom, but very different conflict. Very much still about relationships, about building partner capacity, and then trying to bring stability to the region through means that were less kinetic or less lethal, and trying to help people live a better life.
So let me play devil's advocate for a minute. With the Philippines, they pretty much got along with you, and you said you were trying to show them a better life. Let's compare it to Iraq, Afghanistan. Did you at any point ever feel like maybe that want and desire that you saw in the Philippines wasn't necessarily there from the people there, or is that a crazy thing to think?
No, I think what we were encountered mostly in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I saw that kind of just my own lens during my times there, where hey, these were some generational differences that we're never going to get past. These were some generational differences that collectively we as the U.S. military had broken things or possibly killed people in the battle space, where people are going to remember that for a very long time, and they're going to have that level of disdain for you, no matter what what you try to bring to the table in the sense of providing them a better livelihood. That hits deep, right? People remember bloodshed. People remember, what it is and how they felt when they either lost somebody or they saw, their village or their tribal region, crumble. And I think that's one of those, in the sense that in the Philippines, we hadn't been doing that. There was no large scale campaigns to get rid of people and really kind of disrupt the networks there, in the sense you were moving people, but not like large scale. I think in what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, and kind of my lens there, it was, we may not get over these, and it may take years or generations to do so. And so, I think those are three completely separate conflicts, of which I did have the opportunity to participate in all three, and they all were approached very differently and had to be prepared for very differently.
How do you get your mind state right when you go from a place like the Philippines, where they want a better life, they want a better a government, an organization, family life, all those kind of things, and then you go into an Iraq and Afghanistan, and you say that people don't forget about the bloodshed and stuff, but there were truly people that didn't want us there, that didn't feel we should be there, and it kind of goes both ways. The bloodshed isn't forgotten on the other side either, and when you see people that don't necessarily want us there when we're doing the job that we're doing, how do you deal with that in your mind and make that okay and still think that you're accomplishing a worthy goal and a worthy mission?
I think the way to approach that was, we're continuing to make progress, right? Very much of what we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan, initially, post September 11th, was ensuring that something like that did not happen again. And then, years later, so I didn't deploy to Iraq until 2009, and then Afghanistan was 10, and then 13 again. Was that, hey, we had made progress in the sense that our homeland, the United States of America, the threat and the complex attack that we had seen, stateside, things like that couldn't happen again because we had taken care of it, or we had done a good job of disrupting the networks that they could not perform another complex attack on the homeland. So that's kind of one way of thinking it. Another way was that, hey, we've been there for so long that we had developed these relationships and had, really helped to build a democratic government that was going to be able to sustain itself for a long period of time, and would bring progress, construction, opportunities to Iraq and Afghanistan in separate capacities. And that's one of the things I think that in 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, those were exciting. Those were kind of cool things that we could say we're making progress. We were seeing it. You were seeing construction. You were seeing women going to school. You were seeing schools being built. And I would say a modern sense of life and a modern sense of progress and education that was visible to the soldiers overseas. And as special forces soldiers in those those years as well, you're living with your Afghan or Iraq counterparts. You're seeing it firsthand. You're reading the intel reports, and stability to the region means no attacks. Stability to that area, that region, means you've disrupted the network of moving drugs, weapon, equipment, and men, in and out through kind of the rat lines. And so as those were kind of, I guess, dwindling or being disrupted, it was like, okay, cool. We're making great progress here. And I'm seeing it because we are not having, larger scale attacks. We're not seeing as many people or as much movement. And so it's almost like that visible, okay, things are going pretty well. And I feel like we're accomplishing things, and therefore it's kind of, it's a warm, good feeling of the things that we're doing there.
And when I ask about stuff like that, I look at it because I've said it a ton of times before. You can't help but get jaded in jobs that we do: first responder, police, fire, military. You can't help but get a little jaded. And I think everyone does. And so when I ask that question, I look at when you're trying to do a good thing and you're trying to make positive change happen, and you can't get it through, or you can't kind of get to the finish line of it, it starts to be a very frustrating situation. Whether that be certain parts of a city where you're having, spikes in crime and you can't get them down no matter what happens because you're not getting that partnership with the people around you. And I know that happened for you a little bit in all of these countries. How do you not get jaded from it? Or do you think that you did become a little jaded of it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, DJ. So yeah, I had the opportunity to go overseas. I deployed to combat, of which I would say I didn't experience combat. I listened to several of the other guests you've had as well, and of course my good friend Chuck. And the gunfights and really the kinetic operations and the controlling aircraft at multiple echelons, and bringing fires down on the battlefield. Those were things I didn't experience. I was prepared for, trained for, but didn't have the opportunity to experience those. For me, that's probably a great thing. But so for me, I don't know if it was jaded or if it was, in the regions that I was during those specific times, things were not incredibly kinetic. Things weren't terribly scary. Um, and they weren't as visibly, I guess, as visibly catastrophic as some of the other places that we've seen across Iraq and Afghanistan. So maybe for me it was, um, I had a good lens on it, and during my time there deployed, I would read about a lot of the more kinetic things. But for us, it was like, okay, I think we've accomplished something, and I think we have brought quote unquote stability because we weren't being actively attacked outside the occasional mortar. We weren't being seeing complex ambushes. Anytime we went outside the wire with our partner force, we anticipated getting hit, but it never happened. And so those were okay, maybe we did make some good progress here. And maybe that is being jaded a bit. But again, for me, it was like, okay, if I'm not seeing it firsthand and we're not, actively kind of seeing in our intelligence summaries, then maybe we have made that little bit of progress in the region that has made a difference. And maybe that's the good progress that we've made forward.
So let me play devil's advocate to you again.
Send it.
I know that you and Chuck joke a lot when you're on the show and stuff, but I want to ask you a very serious question in the form of how you approach it with Chuck. Do you think that's the standard command answer? Do you think that's the standard officer answer where you say, yeah, I think we're doing good things. Here's my buzzword. Here's my buzzword. We're doing good things here. We're moving these things here. And overall, we're doing a great job. Because I'm telling you, I see it in law enforcement, and I joke with you about that because you're an officer, and I know that you take it very well from Chuck about this. But do you almost think maybe that's that jadedness coming out of me when I hear someone say, we're doing good things, we're moving in the right direction? It all sounds like buzzwords, and I don't know if there's any physical something you can touch to go, that's how we know we made a difference.
Yeah, that's one of those things is, yep. If you kind of ask the people in the region, it's like, all right, have we made progress here? It's like, I have no idea what they'd actually say. Coming from Chuck would probably say something along the lines of like, yep, Bobby, you were just at the wrong time and all the cool shit was happening around you. And you just missed it, bro.
Yeah, that's exactly what he would say.
What Chuck would say? He'd probably be like, actually, Major Tuttle, we just moved you to the Plan B site so we could go to a gunfight over here because we wanted to get it and we knew you weren't good with your fucking pistol. That's probably what Chuck would say. For me, it's one of those like, not to be kind of like warm and fuzzy or anything. It's just, I genuinely think that the work that was done, as far as quote unquote building capacity, is like, okay, you stand up a village stability element, and they're not getting attacked. They're well trained. They're organized, and it might be fighting season, but like no one's going out to mess with them. Maybe they're just waiting for us to leave the area. And then kind of go into like a latent incipient phase where like, all right, the SF Special Forces team can move on, and then we're gonna come up and we're gonna annihilate the people you guys just trained. That didn't happen either, but for me, it's one of those like, all right, I think that we actually did make some decent progress during our time there. We spent a lot of time getting to know the population. And then we spent a lot of time messaging that we had trained our partner force, very well. And then we would go out with a presence of them and kind of show, right? A show of what we had done, the large force we had built. And we would, really kind of make sure that our Afghan partners were going out and doing, engagements with the village, just saying, the buzzwords that, hey, we're here to protect you guys. We're here to help out, but we're also here for the righteous cause of making sure that you guys have a better life in this specific region. We want to make sure that generationally your kids can grow up, your kids can have access to these wells, your kids can continue to use the schools, and that your women and children aren't afraid of bad things happening to them. And so we just tried to make sure that it was as genuine as possible, that people felt, and our talking points that like they felt compelled to provide us information. They felt comfortable with us around, and that they knew that if something bad were to happen, that we would come out and we would work to protect them, because that was the region that we were meant to provide stability to. So it kind of going around there is maybe I'm a bit jaded in the sense that that none of the sexy fun stuff had happened that you would see about in the movies. But what felt really good and what felt like we had accomplished things is that we had developed really good relationships, from our opinion, with the locals. The village elders, during any of our meetings, they would come talk to us regularly and let us know what was going on. And then we never felt like it was corrupt. We never felt like we were tricked. And we never felt like, anybody was really out there to get us because we had done them wrong.
So I said all that to say this in the end, and you brought up Afghanistan. So this is where I'm moving with all of this. I think that we did phenomenal stuff. Afghanistan, Iraq, all over the world. We always have. That is the spirit of America. But you talk to guys that were over there and did these things and saw their buddies die. There's so many stories to go through on that. And then we left the way we did. Not because of the military, not because of the command in the military, because people that shouldn't have been making those decisions made those decisions. And when you just talked about those village stability operations where you had chiefs coming and talking to you and people that felt comfortable giving you information, all of that goes into the shitter when you leave, because they look and they go, we trusted you. You said you were here. And by no means is it the soldier on the ground's fault. They spent all of that time, that blood, that sweat, that tears to build that up for someone who shouldn't have been making the decision to come back in and go, we did a great job. Now we're leaving. And everything falls apart. The girls get pulled out of colleges there. The human trafficking kicks up. The narcotics trafficking kicks up. All of those things that you guys worked so hard to get rid of. When you look back on it, how do you make it okay in your head that, yes, we did that, and then people that shouldn't have made that decision, and that's how it left?
Yeah, so DJ, I mean, I think we showed them, i.e., the nations we worked with, our version of right. We showed them our version that opportunities do exist. We showed them that you can have, a nation state that doesn't have to have conflict, doesn't have to be corrupt, that can provide civil liberties to everybody within their population. Women, men, children have a right to continue to grow and develop and be educated. That's obviously our American viewpoint. That's our democratic viewpoint. But for a period of time, we showed them what our version of right looks like. And what's kind of neat? I would actually say, so years later, as a continued special forces soldier, we've hosted several nations here in the United States for training exercises. A lot of times people see us going overseas for trips to go work with our partners across the globe, but it's not uncommon for us to host people here. And one of the really cool things, obviously we have great ranges, we can do airborne operations, there's all sorts of, conveniences of training here stateside with partners from, you name it, India, Bangladesh, Japan, Thailand, Philippines, you name it. But you also come here and we've hosted people and showed them what right looks like for us, in the sense that, we're a developed nation with school systems, highways, municipalities, professional sports. This is what our version of innovation, modernization, and freedom looks like. And so for that period of time that we were operating in Iraq, Afghanistan, we had the opportunity to be part of something pretty special, you know, um, for a generation, right? 20 years. You and I talked earlier when I was 18 years old, making decisions on what university I was going to go to. 22 years, 24 years, I'm down in the Philippines as a lieutenant. Um, for 20 years, we showed people, that's a whole generation. That is an entire
Absolutely.
generation. And I think what that's done, at least, is it's now ingrained in the minds and the memories of the people we've worked with and fought for overseas. And so, really now that's on them, though, right? That is on their shoulders to continue out the fight, to continue to rally the flag behind the pursuit of liberty. But our time over there, as a generation in conflict, showed them that unique opportunity that we have here in the United States, and said, hey, there are other opportunities out there if you want to be part of something. And if you all, as a nation state, and as collectively want to continue that fight, in that cause, we've trained you. We've built relationships. We've maintained contacts. We've been part of, life events for them. and we hope that you can continue that fight moving forward. Our government has asked us to come back and focus on other things.
Fantastic answer.
Is that an officer answer for you there?
That is an officer answer, but it's a fantastic answer. It really does show how maybe people haven't looked at it before. Let's move forward in your career. Now you're long tabbed. You wanted to speak Russian. You got Tagalog. So one more time in your career, you wanted something. You did not get it. But once again, it worked out for you because you get that. You get Okinawa and you get shuffled off to a dive team. How great is that?
DJ, that was dope. That was so cool. I got to go to a Special Forces dive team in Okinawa, Japan, which is like the Hawaii of Japan. I think my ODA collectively dove more than like anybody in the regiment. We were in the water, whether it was the pool or the South China Sea. We were in the water like a minimum of 3 to 4 times a week, whether it was diving, snorkeling, working on closed circuit, open circuit, or just on boats. I mean, if you're going to go anywhere and be a member of a dive team, which if anybody doesn't know, I'm a combat diver. Chuck Ritter would give me shit for not saying that, but it's probably one of the coolest military schools that is offered. It's arguably the most difficult school in the Army, and then it's a unique club within the smaller special forces community, of a little bit of street credibility, and get to do something kind of unique, kind of cool, kind of hard. And yeah, I got to go the chance to go to be a dive team leader in Okinawa, which was absolutely incredible. You're on boats, you're in the water, you're rocking board shorts in the team room, UDT shorts, which are cool, skies out, thighs out. And it was one of those, like, you just have the swag, you get to look the part, everyone's fit, and you're the dive team. So guys are like, that's cool, I want to be part of that. It was a special place to be. I was very proud to be a member of ODA 1125 in Okinawa, Japan.
Did you see any kind of operations with them other than what we're talking about where you're in the pool or you're in the ocean? Are you seeing real world missions with them?
Sure. So the unique thing about First Special Forces Group, excuse me, First Battalion, First Special Forces Group, is you're a 14-hour time difference from everybody in the States. You are the only thing, special operations oriented wise, truly like in the Indo-Pacific. We've got folks in Hawaii. That's another 7-hour flight to like mainland Japan, and then another 3 hours to Okinawa. So you're the only thing out there. You are truly a first responder for any sort of crisis, which is awesome. And the unique thing is the highest ranking person is the battalion commander, so an O5, which when you're a captain, that seems very, very like mature and old. And now it's kind of like, oh, it's just an O5. Like, that's awesome. Like, what authority and responsibility you have, and that guy has as an O5 out there. So you're asking operation wise, um, operating in every country you can imagine. And the dive team gets to be like, hey, we're going to the littorals. So, which just means I get to go to the beach instead of being in the jungle. I'm going to go to the river and the beach and operate for all of our training events. Now, what's really cool is I think it was 2015 or 16. I was just removed from the dive team and moved up to the headquarters support company. But long story, I think I sent you a photo of this. Is like the SS Cossack. It's this huge military vessel that is leaving Okinawa and shipping all sorts of like equipment to Thailand to participate in the big exercise that happens in Thailand every year. And there's like vehicles. I think there's helicopters. There's planes. There's all sorts of stuff on this ship, and it is leaving Okinawa, like leaving the harbor, and it runs aground, like no joke, hits a reef, runs aground a couple miles off the east side of Okinawa, and it's operated by the Navy. And I think the actual captain of the ship happens to be a former SEAL, which makes the story even better. And so they call over to Okinawa like proper, to like the Naha port, and they're like, hey, like we ran aground, like our boat is stuck, and we have gazillions of dollars worth of military equipment headed to Thailand, and we can't move, like we are stuck, completely run aground. And so the Navy is like, oh man, what like, what divers can we call? And so they wind up calling our battalion headquarters and say, can you guys activate one of your dive teams to go do a assessment on the ship's hull, so the bottom of the ship, to see how bad the damage is. And like our dive team is like, bro, we are in. Like, this sounds awesome. The Navy called a bunch of Army Green Berets to go dive on a ship. Absolutely. And they were kind enough. They invited me to tag along to be the safety diver because I was just moved from the team. And so we go out. There's like 13 of us total, all kitted up, all of our dive equipment, GoPros on sticks, and essentially the team does a dive on the hull, and the Japanese, like tugboats, are holding this ship on the left side and the right side to make sure it doesn't tip over because it's run aground on the reef, and during low tide it could literally just tip over, which would cause catastrophic damage to all the equipment on there. And so it's probably costing hundreds of $1,000s per day for these Japanese tugboats to hold the ship. And you can just see like the dollar meter just running as this thing's happening over like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So our ODA goes out, get escorted like first class out to the boat, drop a couple, probably about a couple kilometers off, go in our Zodiacs and get close to the actual USS, or the SS Cossack, and then we drop the team sergeant and a few of the other divers, and they do a hull assessment. So they basically swim bow to stern, so front to back, with GoPros, so they can see what the damage looks like and how bad the reef is. And then we climb the ladder to get up to the boat, through the hatch door on the side because you can't get on this thing. And so we get in there and we look at the GoPro footage and then present to the captain of the ship what we think is probably the main anchor point, any damage associated, and then provide them advice on how we best think to weld it or prepare it, kind of fix the holes, and then how they should get off. So long story is they flew out some folks from the West Coast, from Coronado, who came out. They wound up using our video footage to repair the ship about 2 or 3 days later, and then the ship during high tide was able to be tugged out by the tugboats and then go back on its course. The ODA itself got recognized, which was super cool. Everybody on the team got Navy Achievement medals. And so you got to think kind of like real world, like shit kind of went wrong, even though it's not a dangerous setting. The Navy called expert Special Forces combat divers to come out and actually do like an assessment of the ship. And it worked out really well, very professional. And, I would expect nothing less from a group of very professional combat divers. The red phone rang in America's
Got
team,
it.
the team, and they picked up, and the team was like, "Yeah, we got this. We can knock it out."
All right. So I want to point out something else with your career that I think a lot of people may not know. Indo-Pacific is what you're talking about. You ran tons of stuff in Indo-Pacific theater. The importance of this is there's 3 nuclear states, China, North Korea, and India there. 4 of the world's largest militaries are there, and more than half of the world's population is there. And I don't think people understand. They see the Middle East, they see Afghanistan, they see other parts of the world where we do things in Europe and things like that. How much what you guys are doing, can we talk about how much it affects everything else that's going on in the world?
Yeah, sure. But DJ, that sounds like a very officer answer that you just gave out right there, man. I love it. No, so you got to think though. So years back, it was the quote unquote pivot to Asia, where I would say that most of the Department of Defense forces, to include First Special Forces Group, they were focused on Asia the whole time. With the occasional and periodic rotations to Iraq and Afghanistan, but like the lens never came off of the Indo-Pacific or Asia and the importance of it. And you got to think that. You got the major superpowers. You do have North Korea. You do have China. You do have India. You're very focused on those regions and the influence that those have. Those countries have on the partners. A sense of building economic progress throughout the ports, throughout the major metropolitan areas, the major cities of those regions, the trade, like that. That's huge. That is enormous. And really what our special forces group and then the larger special operations enterprise is doing is it's continuing to be that partner of choice, right? When we go out and work with people, we treat them with dignity and respect. We show them, again, what we think our version of right looks like, but we adopt what they can do in triple canopy jungles, in the water regions, with language and culture, with the equipment that they have. And so rather than going around showing people and kind of telling them, hey, you must do this, this is what right looks like because we're battle tested in Iraq and Afghanistan, we tailor what we've learned and we go out and work with our partners, partners being a SWAT team, Homeland Defense, Special Forces units, Tier 1 units from across all of those countries. And we say, hey, here's what we've learned from combat, but here's what works for us. Let's tailor that to you. How can you better protect yourself? How can you better project your power? How can you better just treat your military and continue to progress your people for continued sustainment and reenlistment in the military, because these programs and systems work for us. And at the end of the day, if you can continue those relationships, the relationships matter. Relationships truly matter, and those are what I think will continue to pay dividends for the U.S. government as progress continues out in the Indo-Pacific, and there are maybe sides being taken. It's how do you choose us as a better partner, and how do you want to be partnered with us, or at least be associated with us so we can continue to have influence on you.
So let me ask you something. I want to go back to the question that I asked you about Afghanistan. When you say people are going to choose sides, they're going to pick who they want to be partners with, the stuff that we talked about earlier, does that hurt us in the future? When people are picking partners, when people are picking who they want to team up with, is it going to hurt us at all? Or from what you see in the lens and the landscape that you see it from, are we okay?
No, I think we're going to be okay. And I think that, it's not as binary as it comes across, right? Picking partners, picking sides. It's collaboration and cooperation together, right? We have people we have nations we compete with, but it's okay to compete with, to collaborate with both nations. So it's better for your specific nation. Some examples that are out there is, there's some smaller militaries out there, some smaller economies. You look at Thailand, you look at Vietnam, you look at the Philippines, for example, is like, it doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be you choose one nation to work with over the other. It's, you can continue to do what's in the best interest for you, but just know that, who's been there a while, who's been there you can rely on and trust if stuff goes sideways. And I think those relationships at the end of the day are what you're looking for, of how you've been treated previously and who you think you can truly rely on. It's tough to kind of quantify that, though, right? You can't sit there and say like, all right, stability in the region or deterrence, like nothing's happened. How do you quantify what success looks like? But if we're continuing to be invited back, if militaries are continuing to look at us and say, we want to be involved with you, we want to learn from you, we want to have you show us, but also help us, and we're willing to give you, access to the region and resources and kind of, a leg up in the sense that you're here more frequently, and that's okay. Then that doesn't hurt them, it doesn't hurt us, and it allows us to continue to cooperate together, which I think is a good thing for all of us. Nobody wants to go, see a version of large scale combat operations. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to implode economies, and competition's kind of or integrated deterrence is the word that we're speaking of right now. It's kind of the buzzword. But if you look at those relationships and how they matter and who you can rely on and continue to call and continue working with, that'll go a long way.
All right. I want to talk about one final deployment of yours. And I want to talk about Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Yeah. So let's talk about that deployment. What's the deal with it?
Afghanistan, in the sense that Chuck Ritter's deployment there and his phenomenal Forged in Fire episode of Pineland Underground. That was one take. And yeah, I screwed
Well,
up.
set up the story. I want people to know.
So you want to know more about Pineland Underground, or?
Oh, we'll talk about that in a minute. I want to hear about Afghanistan.
So I was charged with setting up Pineland Underground, or really the official podcast of the Special Warfare Center in School, or SWIC as we call it. Um, I had the opportunity to work for a phenomenal leader, Major General Roberson, and we had a great relationship. And I was given a lot of autonomy in the sense of bringing a good podcast together. And so I kind of start out. I'm a special forces soldier. I'm like, yeah, run a podcast, man. How does that work? We had one. It was called Knowledge Wins, and it's very much wasn't quite a podcast by definition. Wasn't synchronized on all the platforms like iTunes, Spotify, and the branding kind of was subpar. I was like, okay, how do we make this thing actually good and something we're proud of? How do we brand it? So we crowdsourced some branding, nailed down Pineland Underground, which is a phenomenal name of Pineland being the mythical country that all special operations soldiers deploy to for their training exercises while they're here going through our training pathway and basically learning their trade within special operations. And the underground is one of the elements within unconventional warfare. And the flag you see on the logo is the actual Pineland flag, or the Pineland Resistance flag. So long story is I get introduced to Chuck Ritter, who is the deputy commandant at our non-commissioned officer academy, and I'm going to interview him about his experiences in Afghanistan and what he's learned, his road to recovery from some of his combat wounds. Here's some amazing stories and talk about really some of his actions overseas, and just get to know him a bit. He's got a phenomenal story. So we titled the episode "Forged in Fire," and there was a great Special Warfare magazine article that had come out, and so I read the script or the citation from that, and it was like a 4-minute thing where it was like trying to make it dramatic and cool, and yeah, I
That's
spit
where you
out
went wrong, right there.
Afghanistan. And to this day, his son actually makes fun of me for that. He's like, "Yeah, Dad, Afghanistan. What the hell is that?" But no, phenomenal episode actually, and what's really sparked our relationship for working together on what is the Pineland Underground official podcast of the Special Warfare Center, and really how you and I got connected, and something that Chuck and I and the entire team are really proud of to continue working on.
I want to talk about something serious, and then we're going to come back to the podcast because there's a lot of good stuff that I want to talk about. But I want to talk about mental health awareness. What we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. You've talked about it a couple times on the show. You had an episode when the wolves come knocking. That was Mike Fioca. And then you had the masks we wear. An SF soldier speaks out. That was Sergeant Major Josh Thompson. Now you've talked about mental health, both of those. Mike's story, absolutely fantastic. The article that he wrote, the masks that we wear, Josh Thompson wrote, another fantastic thing. I want to ask you, and I don't want an officer answer. I want it off the cuff from your heart. Are we doing the right thing, mental health awareness, and getting these guys back to baseline?
Yeah, so we are on the right path. Are we doing it right? Yes. Have we figured it out completely? And have we made amazing strides in it? I think we're still falling short on that end. And what I'm getting at is, we put a lot of effort as leaders. We talk about mental health pretty regularly. What I think, though, is soldiers across the board, and definitely within the special operations community, they're going to struggle years later after events from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from combat, right? It's not something you come back from a deployment and all of a sudden like you're dealing with a mental health issue, or it really hasn't sunk in yet. You haven't even like compressed coming back from a deployment. Nothing's kicked in. Your brain hasn't been able to really understand what it's seen or done, or what you as a person have been asked to do, and you haven't coped with some of those things, even a loss of a buddy yet. And so really it's one of those things that, like, it may not happen for years. It may not happen for 6-7 years later. So what I think we're failing at right now, but making better progress, is trying to identify years later where guys are starting to, like, have those triggers of, oh shit, that guy, he's starting to see the negative things, and he's starting to react to the negative things that he saw in combat a few years ago. But the person, when he redeployed, 7 years before, hasn't been the same person who's checked up on him. And so it's somebody new getting to know him, somebody new hearing his story, somebody new trying to digest and understand what we've asked that service member to do or put them through. And then all of a sudden you're starting from ground zero because you don't quite know the same continuity that person has had previously. We talk about it though, right? Mental health's a real thing. Mental health is an umbrella term, but people struggle and they cope in whatever way, whether that's alcoholism, whether that may be, possibly, turning to drugs, or, maybe that's just their behavior. Maybe that's just shutting people out. It's tough in the sense that there's no complete, and cure is not the right answer. There's no complete way for every person to just know that they're running through issues. Everything has to be kind of a tailored approach. I would say that the stigma is starting to fade, but still there. The stigma of people asking for help. It takes courage to ask for help and to seek out resources. Resources are there. The military has invested in psychologists, clinical psychologists, military family life consultants, you name it. Any of these things that can allow a service member or their family to talk to. What hasn't quite reached everybody is the sense that it's okay to ask for help. And asking for help is one of the most difficult things a special operations soldier will do. We assess and select special operations people to be adaptive problem solvers. We ask them to do complex things and just figure it out with little to no resources. And so now we're asking them to ask for help when we've selected them and trained them to not have to do that. And that's one of the bigger stigmas that we're trying to sort through, is ensuring that people know it's okay to ask for help. Here's how you do it. Here's how you seek the help. And here's what the help looks like. It's not going to be like here's go to 6 clinical sessions and all of a sudden you'll feel better. Talk to this one person, you're going to feel better. It takes a combination of your brothers in arms who are around you and your colleagues. It takes a combination of good leadership supporting people. It takes a combination of the family at home knowing that the person needs help and helping them, guide them to reach out. And then it takes the person, him or herself, saying, I think I have something I'm working through. I need to get help. I need to talk to somebody. I have a problem and it's me and it's going on inside my mind. I need to work it out. And I think that's where we're probably falling short right there, is making sure that people know it's okay to ask for help and then showing them what right looks like to do so.
Let me pose another question to you. When people ask for help and when they reach that arm out to do it, do you think that there's still, I don't know if the word is a stigma, do you still think that there is, people want to hear that you want help, but they don't want it to get too messy? Command doesn't want to get too messy. The general public doesn't want to get too messy. And once again, I'm speaking from a law enforcement point of view, where, yeah, we want to hear that you have a problem, but if it's a real bad problem and it could get out there, we really don't want you talking about it that much. Do you agree that's still around?
I think there's probably some of that still around. I mean, if you look at Chuck and I's podcast, right, with Mike Fioca, and you look at, Mike Fiola, and you look at Josh Thompson, right? You have two guys who have some pretty dark stories, and they literally contemplated suicide to the point where they were almost they were in the process of about to commit an act, but did not. And that's scary, right? That's horrific. That is not something that I would say a lot of people want to go on a megaphone, and leaders want to go on a megaphone and kind of make those announcements. And we have people who are that close to doing it, to commit an act of taking their own lives. What I will say though is that if you look at the number of people who have taken their own lives, and suicide specifically, I no longer have enough fingers to count on of the brothers that I've had who've taken their own lives. And that probably is very similar across, most guys I work with. And I would imagine there's probably some similarities across law enforcement and first responders, where people don't know how much they're appreciated. They think that there's no way out except for falling that really, really dark hole. And they're just very close to it and want to find a way to get out of whatever the hellhole that they have found themselves in a very dark place. And so I would say that I think we're at the point right now where I think senior leaders are starting to say, hey, like it's enough's enough, and one is too many. And if we need to go out and say, yep, we have these mental health issues that we've identified, but we want to fix it. We definitely want to fix it. We want people to be okay with asking for help. And if it takes, that stigma of, special operations has some sort of issue to fix it, we're willing to do so, because we don't want to lose another person. I think there's probably some senior leaders out there who don't agree with that. For me personally, that's one of those that, yeah, we want to get ahead of things. We want to be preventative. We want to make sure that we've taken care of our people to the best of our ability and given them every sort of option to find help. And we've surrounded them with the help that they need, that they feel comfortable in accepting it.
Once again, I'm going to speak law enforcement perspective, but the way we look, and maybe it's that jadedness coming out again, but it's a number. It's a numbers game. When you're done with your career, you move on. That you're kind of forgotten about. You're left after you've given 20, 25, 30 years of your life. That's a big reason why I started this podcast. Was I saw these guys doing this, and a year later, 2 years later, they were dead, whether that be from suicide, alcohol, whatever it may be, they were dead. Health conditions. When you look at it, and the mental health awareness, the suicide is grown exponentially, and maybe we're just hearing more about it now. What are things that we can do to catch up and kind of slow this rate down?
Yeah, I was actually sitting in a great meeting with focus on this topic with people over here in Second Special Warfare Training Group. And one of our psychologists had just mentioned, is like, hey, like when you go talk to people, right? You anybody across the command, like everyone's busy, everyone has their own issues, everyone has their own stressors. But you see someone who's clearly struggling a bit, and all right, hey, how things going, man? Hey, living the dream. That's first answer. Or things are great, doing awesome. Like, okay, cool. Like that's not true. Like that's initial shield. That's an easy mask that you're wearing right now. Okay, what's the follow up? And as you start to dig, the question the psychologist asked us as the leaders in the room was, how many times have you ever actually said the words, "Are you considering suicide?" Like those words. Are you considering suicide? And the majority of the people in the room were like, no, like if I mentioned that, maybe they would follow through, maybe they would, be steering towards it. And I think the power of that, those words of like, hey, are you considering hurting yourself or suicide, is one of those that actually hits home with people in the sense that, like, yeah, they'd be more willing to say, to admit if they were. And then you could have another conversation from there of, okay, let's talk. What's going on in your life? How are you doing? How are things? What are the things that are causing you to be in this dark place? I'd also say though too, what's really hard is the population of our people who are outside the military, who have left the military, have moved on. And you just brought that up, right? it's when you have people who have transitioned or retired from the military, and now they no longer have their buddies checking in on them. They're not going to a team room on a daily basis or around the people who know their daily behaviors. Um, they're not surrounded by the love of the brothers in arms and the sisters in arms that we have within the community of the military, or in your case, again, law enforcement. You maybe no longer have that sense of purpose when you go to work, or it's a different community you're surrounded with where you may not feel as comfortable. That's our population that I'm most nervous about. Those are the people that I want to make sure, and I think that we collectively, as brothers, need to continue checking in on and having a pulse with and keeping up with, because as they move on from what they would say is those kind of continued support mechanisms, and they're now post-military, that's probably the community of people that I would be most nervous about, of not having that sense of camaraderie, purpose, and not being in that same kind of service felt commitment that they have.
All right, deeply personal question here. I want to use two of you. I want to use you and I want to use your father. Did you, as you look over your career and now that you have been in the schoolhouse and things like that, had a little time to decompress, open that luggage up, open some of those boxes up, have you found that you suffered from PTS at all? Have you suffered any backlash from it? Has it raised its head to you? And number two, now that you have been a special forces soldier, you've been in the military, you've been in command positions. When you look back on your father, do you see that he did in his time had trouble as he stepped away from that world?
Yeah, DJ, that's another good, deep question. Really good question. So for me personally, again, I don't feel like I've ever seen anything horrific in combat. I don't think I've ever been exposed to anything that has troubled me or that I feel like I couldn't openly talk about. That's not the case for a lot of our people, right? I don't know if that's a rare instance, but that's just my kind of personal experience. For me, I do think that stress is heightened, and I take everything that I do extremely seriously, because I know that in a training setting, it could be the difference of life and death, and in a work setting or a garrison type setting, I strive to try to be as professional, but also as excellent as possible. And that's a lot of self-produced stress of continue to try to crush it and rock, and be as professional but also as driven as possible, because I know the value of training and preparing for combat, which is, I would say, almost as stressful as well, because you don't know what's going to happen and you want to be as ready, but you'll never actually be 1,000% ready for combat. It's kind of a best guesstimate, if you will. So do I feel like I have any post-traumatic stress? I'm going to kind of just say no, but I definitely feel like I have a heightened sense of stressors or irritants or things, because I want to ensure that people around me are as prepared as possible, and that we collectively are prepared for combat if it's asked of us, and ready to go out and do and deploy if needed. For my dad, I think he kind of had similar experiences from me. Very much a Cold War soldier, always preparing for, but never seeing combat firsthand. Um, he was a member of the Crisis Response Force, or the CRIF, in 10th Special Forces Group overseas. And I remember kind of hearing stories about his guys preparing to respond to different hostage crises, but never actually getting the green light. And so I would say, kind of similarly, post traumatic, likely not, but that driven sense of wanting to make sure that everything is perfect, everything is greatly prepared for, and knowing that if you do get activated for combat in a split second, and you are responsible for the soldiers around you, and if something goes sideways or wrong, it's the training and your leadership that will, could ultimately be the failure and inevitably somebody getting hurt. That's a lot of weight on your shoulders right there. So that's just kind of my personal take on it. Um, I hope that's a decent answer to tell you that, or at least a little glimpse from my lens.
So when you were talking just now, you said that you always try and keep it as professional. You're in garrison right now. You try and keep it as professional as possible, but you always try and crush everything that you're doing. And so it almost seems like you're saying those things are mutually exclusive of each other. You have to either be professional or you have to crush it. Am I reading it wrong, or I guess I'm not understanding what you mean by that?
No, I think that maybe it's just I would say like it's self-induced stress, to try to make sure that you are as prepared as possible for combat, but also you have adequately thought of everything in the event, like you're actually going to go get activated for combat itself. And so, for me personally, it is, I want to make sure that I don't half-ass anything. The people around me are pushed to the point where they're equally as prepared as me, and then we collectively are prepared to deploy, to go do training events, or to make sure that we've gone through rehearsals of training scenarios here stateside as much as possible, so that it becomes second nature. It's always the anticipation of, if you do get deployed, what's going to kick in. What's the level of acceptable risk, and to what level do we need to be most prepared? And I guess just what I'm trying to get at is, when I say crush it, it's very much the making sure that the people around me are pushed to the point where they've learned, and it becomes second nature of what it is they're going to do. And that if we look back after being deployed or activated, that nobody has any regrets, because we knew we prepared as much and as hard as possible.
Okay, that explains it. All right, let's talk about what you're doing now, and let's talk about the podcast, where people can find you, things like that, to kind of wrap this whole thing up. You are now the director for the Army Special Operations Language, Regional Education, and Cultural Directorate.
Yeah, so my target language that I learned through Army Special Operations is Tagalog. I would say I'm semi-conversational in German. Can still still pick up, but as far as listening, reading and speaking, maybe not so much. So at least I'm familiar. And then English. But what's unique to Army Special Operations is, we do what's called the indigenous approach, which is we work by, with, and through our partner forces from across the globe. If we can work with a partner from another nation and build them up to secure themselves, to do work on our behalf, to not put U.S. Service members' lives at risk, and we can help our partners be better trained and prepared for anything that might happen in their own countries or their neighboring countries, then that's what success looks like. And what I try to tell people, and I think it really does kind of pay dividends, is that, okay, language is a bridge. Language leads to understanding, a shared language. Understanding leads to trust. Trust leads to partnerships, and partnerships lead to alliances. And language is the root of that understanding and being able to work with somebody. And DJ, do you speak any other languages yourself? Okay.
No,
So it's
I would love
one
to
of
learn Spanish.
heck yeah, come here to SWIC. I mean, we'll throw you in some Spanish class. So language for us, though, it's one of what makes us unique and different for the Army. The higher the war, the SEALs kind of tried to emulate being language and culturally savvy. They no longer do it. They divested. They no longer teach languages at NSW. MARSOC, the Marine Special Operations, they do language and culture. However, it's not for everybody. Not every job or military occupational specialty learns a language, and they only learn 3 languages, where we, as Army Special Operations, have 12 strategic languages that we teach to our soldiers. Because we're geographically aligned, we deploy people to the region that they've trained for, and they can go work with that partner. And what's really cool is I've been here at the Special Warfare Center for 2 years. I wanted to be around students in this new job. So I asked my boss, I was like, hey, I really enjoyed working at the headquarters for 2 years, but I'd like to go be around students. And the language phase is the very last phase that any of the new students or new graduates, last thing that touches them before they go out to the operational force, before they join their real units and the real teams. So language is very much the finishing school for all of the Special Warfare Center. We teach things, outside of language. It's about building character, teaching values, and work ethic. Now, what's cool is if you go through the special forces, civil affairs, or the psychological operations pipeline or qualification course, you're there for about a year learning what it is you're going to do, what it is your job is. Well, their very last phase is in an academic setting in a classroom in language. So as a special forces soldier, our people are out, in the woods running raids, ambushes, small unit tactics. They attend the survive, evade, resist, and escape school. They learn their jobs, whether that's weapons, communications, medical, or any of their other occupational specialties. And so it's all about team building. It's about being in an environment where you can muscle through it and you can kind of like push through it and you can, yeah, let's get after it. When you go to language is an equalizer. Like everybody learns at a different rate. I don't care if you're a captain or you're a sergeant. Like if it doesn't click upstairs, you're going to struggle. And then our people struggle because it's on them. It's something you have to do internally. You have to be driven to learn your language. And you're in a classroom 30 hours a week, 5 days a week. Excuse me. Yeah, 30 hours a week, 5 days a week for about 4 to 6 months, learning that language to be conversational. And so what's really cool is right now I have like 538 brand new RSOF soldiers in class, and I have 190 plus language instructors who represent 50 different nations of origin. So it's like being a principal of like a mini United Nations. It's absolutely incredible. Our instructors have been there for, 7, 8 plus years. They've invested their time to be educators in our special operations soldiers. And it's really neat because our soldiers are incredibly motivated. They're savvy. They want to learn the language so they can use it in the country they're going to deploy, the region they're going to deploy to. And it's a really humbling place to be and really being part of that last developmental phase for our students before they join the operational force.
All right, let's talk about the podcast. Let's get it out there where people can find you, where they can find the podcast, and on his own webpage on our website. Chuck's already done, so now we got to get you out there.
Yeah, DJ. So Chuck Ritter and I, we are the co-hosts and producers of Pineland Underground. Pineland Underground can be found on all your major podcast platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Google, and all the podcast platforms wherever you can find them. And then again, what we try to do is we have a mixture of being informative, entertaining, educational, and inspiring. We've brought great special operations soldiers, legends, new graduates on, and we've talked, everything you can imagine from civil affairs, psychological operations, special forces, history, current missions, training pathways, uniqueness, traits that we're looking for in the people. And we've also looked at businesses and seen how leadership traits in the business world, in the competitive sports world, align with things and ways we approach competition within special operations. So you can find it on all your major platforms, Pineland Underground, and it's the official podcast of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School.
If you had to pick 2 episodes, what would you want people to listen to so they can get on board with you guys? What would you say?
Yeah, so if I had to pick one, it would be Secrets to Great Leadership. There's a lot of secret ingredients to great leadership. We have some phenomenal guests. One of them being Sergeant Major Chuy Almonte and Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter, talking about expectations and caring for people within the special operations community. So I would say Secrets to Great Leadership. And then we did kind of a 3-part series discussing Special Forces, Civil Affairs, and PSYOP. So I would say check out Ghosts in the Machine. Check out our Civil Affairs episode with Rob McQueen, Full Spectrum Special Operations, Civil Affairs. Check out Forged in Fire with Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter and kind of hear his upbringing, his story, and really how he observed some great leaders, and it really kind of helped him hone and tailor what he wanted to be as a senior leader within the Special Forces community.
Where can people find you?
Hey, so I'm really only available on LinkedIn. I don't have a huge, I don't have a Twitter following. I'm not on Instagram. Facebook, I really keep for family and friends, but I am on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. We talk about things across the Special Warfare Center. We talk about things from Pineland Underground. I'm also involved in a great nonprofit called For Country, where we take special operations members and pair them with business leaders and community members on the golf course to promote things like mentorship, community, and connection. And so really LinkedIn is the best spot to find me, and it's Bobby Tuttle at LinkedIn.
All right. Is there anything else, Bobby, that you would like to tell the world before we end this?
Yeah, so I would say everybody has a story. Everybody has a path that they've found. I would just say it's pretty important that not everybody, has made it on their own, right? And I would say most people, and probably DJ yourself included, I would assume, you've had people give you advice, really help mentor you and really kind of help steer you to be the person that you are today. For me, that's a dad, that is a loving husband, that's a son, a proud son, and that's also a very proud member of our Army and our Special Forces community. And so I think one of the most important things you can do is surround yourself with great people, seek out people, seek out mentors, seek out people who can provide you advice, who've made those mistakes before you and you can learn from, who can help you through hard times. Surround yourself with great people and great family members, because not everybody, nobody does it alone. They've all been molded by the people around them. And it's pretty special to be able to, pay it forward and do that for others. And so my advice to our listeners is, one, just want to say thanks for listening. But two, my advice is, surround yourself with great people and always go out of your way to find those people and ask them to be part of your kind of close-knit family.
Bobby, I'm so glad you came on here, man. I'm so honored that you did this. And everybody, where you can find Bobby. Mostly just go to LinkedIn. You can find him. He'll connect with you. And don't forget, check out the Pineland Underground podcast. Now, where you can find them. Here's where you can find me. You can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on YouTube, where all these conversations are in video, and you can see everything that's going on with this show. You can also check us out on Facebook at the DTD Podcast. Now, your one-stop shop, dtdpodcast.net. That's going to have audio, video. Bobby's going to have his own episode page with all the pictures that we were talking about. The ships, the operations, everything about his career is going to be there. Go check it out, dtdpodcast.net. And don't forget our sponsors. Let's start with Police Coffee. Now, they're an officer-owned business, and they're dedicated to crafting the finest coffees and blends, and they're shipped as soon as they're made to provide you with the freshest coffee available. Each batch, it's roasted fresh by people who knows what it means to stay vigilant, and their specialty coffees do not waste one drop when flavor is concerned. Their coffee's some of the best you'll find, but here's the big thing with me. It serves an important cause. They give back to our community. 50% of their profits goes towards helping family members of police officers who fell in the line of duty. So make sure you go to Police Coffee. They've got a new one Ranger. It's a Texas pecan. They've still got some peppermint mocha, and they've still got some pumpkin spice left over from the fall season that everyone loves so much. And when you go to policecoffee.com, make sure you put in DJK10 for 10% off your order. and welcome our newest sponsor, Mac Belts. If you're looking for the toughest leather belt on earth, you went to the right place, Mac Belts. He served in special operations, and he realized how important it was to have reliable equipment that could withstand tough conditions, and that's what he designed, a belt that's tough enough for anyone, from war fighters to casual weekend warriors. Each belt's made with full-grain leather, and it's handmade by veterans in the United States. Now we got to talk about the buckle. It's the toughest buckle on earth, and they made it unbreakable. It consists of 100 grams of unbreakable American stainless steel. It's engineered, designed, and assembled, machined in the USA, USA-built machines, and veterans making it. So make sure you swing by Mac Belts, pick up a belt, pick up a buckle. It's a new year. It's time for a new belt. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Make sure you check us out next week on the show. That's Bobby. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you later. Bye.